Last year, it was MLB Tonight that beat us. This year, it was Pardon the Interruption. Michael Wilbon is kind enough to join us. I know he's busy, probably prepping for his half-hour Pardon the Interruption tonight. So you got to be exhausted, and Michael joins us now. Good morning, Michael. Congratulations.
Thank you, Dan. It sounds like there's a little bit of enmity in that studio, a little bit.
No, a lot. No, not a little, a lot. Yeah. And then we're saying we've already done twice as much work in an hour as you've done. I mean, maybe not as good of work as you'll do on Pardon the Interruption tonight, but you're 30 minutes. We've already done an hour on this show.
That's 30 minutes on one show, because some of us have more than one show. Oh, wait, you don't.
Okay. All right.
Not right now.
Boom.
Some of us are working on some NBA playoff things. Maybe we're headed to shoot around. Maybe. No, I'm not, but I could put that out there.
Did you celebrate last night?
No.
Oh, come on. No, Mike.
It's great to hear that you were there. It's great to hear that you were there, Dan. No, I'm in Toronto. I will tell you this. I walked into a pub, restaurant, bar, whatever, here in Toronto. Actually, it was Gretzky's. I should probably say that. Walked into Gretzky's here in Toronto, and Charles Wade Barkley and a group of people were there watching the game. And Charles proposed a toast to like half the bar, and everybody toasted, and that was very kind of him. Charles has, how many Emmy Awards do you have, Dan?
I have 5.
See? Okay. Charles has got to have, 8 or 9? Probably,
yeah, maybe.
Right?
Yeah, maybe.
So I thought it was great that Charles did that, stood right up in the bar. And at that moment, I'd only known about an hour. Look, you know me well enough. It's great. I am honored. I am thankful. But I don't pay attention to these things going in. I didn't even know the awards dinner or whatever it is, banquet. I'm not sure what form it took. I didn't know that was last night. And I started, my cell phone started just going crazy. It blew up. And my first thought is, please don't let this be a news story and I got to, run to a studio somewhere.
How many Emmys?
That was my first thought.
How many Emmys does Pardon the Interruption have?
3. That was only the third. That's the only. We're grateful to have the 3.
How did Pardon the Interruption start?
Mark Shapiro was doing Sports Century, and Tony and I were 2 of the panelists, the sports writers who were voting on all those people, the best athletes, the best this, the best that of the 20th century. And Shapiro would come and visit us at the Washington Post and see Tony and me doing what we do now, just across a hallway as we sat in our respective offices. And Shapiro was really young. I mean, he ain't old now, but he was really young. He was in his late 20s. And he said, I remember him saying, if I ever become anything at the network in terms of stature and decision-making, I'm going to put this on television. And Tony was like, yeah, right. Can you get me another cup of coffee and shut up, please? And Shapiro, once he became somebody that could do this, the first call, he called me. I was at the NBA Finals in Los Angeles. Shows you how long ago that was, Finals in Los Angeles in 2001. And he said, we got to have dinner tomorrow night. And I said, why? And he said, because I've been named, whatever the title is, czar of programming, and my first duty is going to be to put you guys on television. And I said, your second duty is going to be to get fired. Because this does not sound like sound thinking to me. And that's how it started.
I heard that Kornheiser almost didn't do it.
Well, neither one of us, both of us almost didn't do it. I remember one day I was much closer to not doing it than Tony.
Okay.
I mean, all these stories tend to revolve around Tony because it's sexier and he's more eccentric. But I was at a place. Tony, being 10 years older, he'd written a column. He'd done all that. He'd done it for a long time. He didn't want to travel and go to games and do the thing that columnists need to do back then in the late 19th and early 20th century. And late 20th and early 21st. So he didn't want to do that stuff, and I did. And so I don't want to be in a studio every day, not going to games. And here I am in Toronto as we speak. I still do that. That was an assistance on my behalf. But then we walked into a studio or newsroom, and there were people there who had moved from Bristol and moved from places, and we're like, why are you people here? And they said, well, there's a television show we intend to start on like October 10th. And we're like, seriously? We haven't signed anything. one of us had, and we were not pressed to do it. And I don't want to sound ungrateful because, again, I'm grateful. But I had the dream job of my life back then, being a columnist for the Washington Post, and so had Tony. And so we were not, moved that we had to do this immediately. And there were people in our lives who said, thankfully, hey, shut up and listen. This is going to be different. Charles Barkley was one of them. And I remember sitting with Charles, and he said, are you crazy? You got to do this. You guys, this is going to be good. It's going to matter. And there were people like that in both of our lives, and so we said, okay, maybe it's time to listen and shut up.
He's Michael Wilbon, pardon the interruption, and in Toronto, Game 4 coming up tonight with the Bucks and those Raptors. The Warriors' ability to come back here and do it in 4 games. You don't have Boogie, you don't have Iguodala, and you don't have Kevin Durant. That's pretty impressive to do it and beat a good Portland team and do it. I think in 3 of the 4 games, Mike, they were down by at least 15 points. What do you make of this run by the Warriors?
Dan, I think it's an all-time great run. I think it measures up to anything I've seen. And I'm too young to have seen. I saw the end of the Russell Celtics, the very end. I remember the last championship, but not much more than that. But obviously we know the history of it. And this since then, and obviously we're talking more teams, more resources. Not every team is a pigeon waiting to be taken advantage of by Red Auerbach. But, I mean, at the point we are now in this culture of sport, for the Warriors to do this with all of their assets available is just stunning. And to do it without Kevin Durant, and you can say, okay, without Boogie Cousins too, but this is about Durant. Man, and I understand they haven't beaten a great team yet in this run. But, the Celtics didn't always beat great teams in Russell's run every time. They usually had to beat one at the end of it, and they often had Will Chamberlain on it, whether it was the conference final or the final. So, man, I mean, we're reminded how great Steph Curry is. I don't know why we needed to be reminded, but we did. Most people did. And, I was at the Houston series. I covered that series, and Game 5, when Durant goes out, I'm thinking, okay, there's no way they're going to win Game 5, and of course they win Game 5. And I thought the Warriors could and perhaps would win Game 7, but to go to Houston and play that way, and I'm tired of dumping on Houston, and I decided this that night. We don't dump on Malone and Stockton. We don't dump on Patrick Ewing. We don't dump on Reggie Miller. We don't dump on who am I leaving out from that great period of time where those guys all lost to Jordan
Barkley.
or Hakeem Olajuwon. We don't dump on them.
Yeah.
We don't say they choked. We don't say they were gaggers. And I'm not going to say that about Harden and Chris Paul. They're not as good as the Warriors. That's what I'm prepared to say. The Warriors are great, and these other teams they're beating are really good, really, really good, but they're not great like the Warriors are great. And so I've now refocused, and to me, it's just time to credit those guys and get off of dumping on people for what they're not.
What happened with the Lakers yesterday?
I don't know. I swear. Man, and the more people I talk to, and here in Toronto, everybody's here, and last week everybody was in Chicago because the draft lottery and then the combine, and people were commuting up to Milwaukee. And so you had like the whole industry sitting around. And nobody had any answers. I mean, the smartest people, the people of longest tenure, nobody had any answers. It's a mess. It's a mess. And the surprise is they're a mess. But we've seen other great franchises become a mess. I mean, notably the Raiders. It didn't happen all the time. It doesn't happen this is 6 years. This is not just a down cycle. This is a mess. But, what happened? I mean, it's a failure of a whole bunch of people and a failure of an institution to sort of keep people moving in the same direction. I mean, it's a lot of that. And I don't know how they get out of it. This is not just about going out, signing a couple of free agents and putting them on the court. I don't believe that. So I think there's a bigger mess than that with the Lakers, and I don't know how they get it fixed.
Yeah, I was surprised Magic went scorched earth with a franchise that he loves so much that you may not like Rob Pelinka, but you can't do that to the Lakers. And I know that he wants to entertain, and First Take did a great job in asking the right questions, but I was disappointed. I was sad when I was hearing Magic say what he part of me was like, hey, it makes my job easier when he says things like this. But then there's a part of me that you want to protect these icons from themselves sometimes and just say, don't do that. Like, you're bigger than Rob Pelinka. Okay, he backstabbed you. All right. But you know what? You could have gone to Jeannie and said, look, you got to make a decision here, Jeannie. For the betterment of this franchise, we have to be on the same page, and we're not. And whatever she decides, but there's no leadership there, Mike. I think that's really what my takeaway is. I need a leader there, and you got to get a leader in there pretty quickly.
Well, going back to one thing you said, Dan, I pretty much agree with you. I don't know that he didn't do that. I mean, it sounds like these things that have been going on involving Pelinka to whatever degree and Magic, it sounds like, I mean, that was going on when people weren't necessarily paying attention yet, and I don't know what conversations he had or didn't have with Jeannie. But yeah, it's impossible to escape that conclusion right now about what they don't have. And can Pelinka, who is, in that position right now, can he do that? Like in talking to all these people in the industry, and now we're going to broaden this out and talk about agents and players and free agent people representing free agents. Like, can Pelinka lead them? Can he lead them out of this? Can he lead them through a summer, which is going to be the most tumultuous summer that the NBA perhaps has ever seen? It certainly could be wilder than 2010 and 16, and those are crazy summers.
Yeah.
But so can he do that?
But do you believe that Jason Kidd, part of the reason why he was brought in, and there's a report that he was brought in to be an assistant head coach because of his relationship with the Greek Freak, that he could somehow convince him in a couple of years. I don't even know if Jason Kidd's going to be in the position in a couple of years, but that you'd bring the Greek Freak. He's already said he doesn't like L.A. and he doesn't like Miami. He doesn't like the big cities. He's comfortable there. And you're going to possibly hire Jason Kidd because of his relationship with the Greek Freak?
Well, but listen, Dan, that's happened already. It happened a couple summers ago. I mean, part of the reason the Wizards hired Scott Brooks, and Scott Brooks, to me, had proven himself as a good coach. You can hire Scott Brooks having nothing to do with his previous stop, which was, of course, Oklahoma City. But part of the reason the Wizards went 5 years,
I know,
5 years, $35 million, was that he was going to get them in with Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant didn't even meet with the Wizards.
Well, it's like the Jay-Z factor. Remember when Jay-Z was a part owner of the Nets and it was like, oh, people are going to want to play with Jay-Z, the Jay-Z factor. Nobody went to play for the Nets because of Jay-Z. No, but it shows you, Dan, how desperate people are to get that big star, to get that one player who disproportionately impacts the game, who tilts the board. Yeah.
It shows you that sport, the NBA, more than any other sport, you wouldn't do that in pro football. You're not going to do that. And we've seen teams win without doing that. In the NBA, teams haven't won without getting that player, except for like the 2004 Pistons. They had an ensemble without an all-time great player, probably, I guess almost certainly without a top 50 player. And I say that with apologies to Chauncey Billups, who I love and loved as a player. But that Pistons team is like the only team that doesn't have that.
Yeah.
So, yes, people are willing to go to preposterous lengths to try and guarantee that they get the player who has the ultimate impact on the game, and now they look and project, and that's Antetokounmpo is one of those 4 or 5.
Mike, it's good to visit with you. Glad to see you putting in a little extra work than just a half hour on Pardon the Interruption. And don't be afraid to mail it in this year so we can win next year. Give us a chance, Mike. Dump a few shows.
I got to mention this. I just thought about the question you asked me earlier. I'll say this real quickly about, or I said who influenced us and who said, hey, stop burying your head and just think about writing a column and do this show. You were one of them.
I know.
Yeah, you were one of them. So I don't just give credit to Charles. I get to say that Dan Patrick is at his own, the absence of another one on the mantle is if you need one. You and I talked back then, and you, I remember, said, are you crazy?
Wait,
write the column and do this.
Mike, so we won the Emmy last night.
We won the Emmy. I'll put your name on it like the Stanley Cup. I'm good with that.
Mike, thank you. I appreciate that. All of a sudden, the day got a little brighter. Thank you again, and congratulations. I'm sure it made Mr. Tony almost smile.
Almost, Dan. Almost. And thank you for having me.
Thank you, Mike. That's Michael Wilbon.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune into Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV. Stream for free on BR Live or download the Dan Patrick Show app.